One of the areas that the specification is now focused more strongly on from this year onwards is the so-called golden era of the Republic, when the Nazi Party was struggling, in other words, the middle of the 1920s. So I've written a model plan to a fairly common question that could come up, and it's this: in what ways did the Nazi Party try to increase its popularity in the years 1924 to 29? Pulling back, just so you can sort of see this, you could adapt this. This could be used to write a detailed essay, should it be a question that carries 12 marks or 16 marks, or it could be adapted to write an answer to a shorter question that, for example, carries 9 marks. The important thing, remember, is the points that are in the introduction and those all important topic sentences, and obviously the point in the conclusion. If it were carrying more marks, then you'd need to bring in more of the information in the right hand column to develop those topic sentences, and I've put the keywords in bold for you. So you can cherry pick, basically, try to back up those topic sentences with some key facts. Don't feel you've got to get all of those facts in, but some of them, depending on how fast you can write and how many marks are available for the question. So let's look closely at what the question is about. So the introduction, focus your introduction on the dates. Remember, the dates are 1924 to 29. Absolutely crucial. All the way through, the chief examiners are always saying in their reports that the candidates who lose most marks don't look at the dates, and so they write material that's irrelevant. Why 1924? Because that's when Hitler was released from jail. Tough time for Hitler. The party had been banned while he was in jail. When he came out, of course, the Republic was doing well. Stresemann was the foreign minister. Things were going well. So Hitler basically had to decide on a new strategy for power, and basically start from scratch. And of course, that new strategy was to take power by winning votes. And by 1929, the party had been rebuilt, so that when the Wall Street crash hit Germany in October 1929, the party was in a strong position to win popular support, as indeed it did in the elections of 1930, which we'll come to in the conclusion. So, the key points. As you can see, there are 4 key points that need to be made. The first one, basically, in paragraph 2, is the lessons that Hitler learned. What were the lessons that Hitler learned? The second point in paragraph 3 is the reorganization of the party. The third point in paragraph 4 is the propaganda aspect, how propaganda was used. And the final point, paragraph 5, is the targeting of propaganda at key groups. So those are the 4 points, just learn them. 1, lessons learned. 2, reorganising the party. 3, propaganda. And 4, targeting key groups. Learn those 4 points. And then in the time you have available, develop them with precise information that is in the right hand column. So we'll just ever so quickly go through those key points to make sure that you understand the points. Zooming in then on that first one, okay, the lessons that Hitler learned. The key, obviously, a key thing is to understand before 1923 the strategy for power was violence. It was revolutionary, and it failed. The Munich Putsch, Hitler was sent to jail. The lesson that Hitler learned was that the authorities, the police and the army, were in sympathy with him. They agreed that like Hitler, they did not like the government in Berlin, but they would oppose a violent attempt to seize power. They would work with Hitler if he followed a legal method to power. For example, the judge who sent Hitler to jail gave him a lenient sentence. Hitler picked up those signals that people in authority would help him as long as he followed a legal route. And while in prison he wrote Mein Kampf, and of course that's where he laid out that new strategy for taking power, which would be taking power by winning votes. Next paragraph, the reorganisation of the party. So a lot to pack into this. You can give lots of examples. The first thing is he needed to get the ban on the party lifted, which he did straight away by visiting the same judge. Mentioned the Bamberg conference. Hitler called a conference in Bamberg. The party had fallen apart, divided, all sorts of groups arguing against each other. There was what we call a faction, the Strasser faction, who were based in the north of Germany, who were threatening to break away from the party. Hitler basically knocked their heads together and said, I am the leader, you need to all basically follow me. And he established what we call the leadership principle, the Führer principle. Okay, he was the Führer, absolute obedience to Hitler. The party would not be run by committee, there would be no democracy, it would be absolute obedience to Hitler, who would run it very, very tightly from above. Now, what that basically meant is the party was very, very effective. Decisions were made extremely quickly because there was no discussion at any level. Now, looking at the lower levels of the party, how that was worked, Hitler set up a very, very effective structure called a Gau structure. He divided Germany into regions called Gaus. He sent a Gauleiter, who was basically a propaganda chief, and to each of those regions, and it was that propaganda chief's job to get the votes, to win over the people in their region to vote for the Nazi Party. Specialist organisations were created to target messages to interest groups. So there was a teachers' league, the NLB, there was a women's league, the NSF, there was of course the Hitler Youth that targeted the message at children. At this stage it was just giving leaflets to them as they outside playgrounds or the school gates when they left school at the end of the day. So you then move into paragraph 4, and this is the area that candidates tend to talk about on the whole. Mass psychology, the understanding of mass psychology, emphasis on Hitler as a strong leader, mass rallies, the use of the swastika symbol, marching SA soldiers as an image of strength and unity, Nazi newspaper, the People's Observer. So all of the strategies. Now obviously the key person to mention there is Joseph Goebbels. He was the mastermind behind it. So really emphasise that. But the understanding of mass psychology, what was great about Goebbels was what made him so effective and so brilliant as a propaganda chief, was that he understood how to persuade people, how to lie to people and make them believe anything. And so it was based on that understanding. If people are in large groups, they're more easily persuaded. Direct the message at their hearts, not their minds. Make them appeal to their faith. And above all, that strong emphasis on Hitler as their leader, as almost like a saviour. No other political party had a strong, charismatic leader like the Nazi Party had with Hitler, and that's something which Goebbels very much played on. So those were all key elements in the way in which the Nazis aimed to improve to increase their popularity. So then the final area is targeting the propaganda at key groups. Now, what that basically means is who were the groups that were most easily influenced, that's 1, and 2, the groups who were in positions of power, 2. So there's a lot you can mention there, but I've basically highlighted the key groups. An agricultural recession hit Germany in 1927, so the Nazis targeted propaganda at farmers. And so even before the Wall Street crash, they were getting a lot of influence in village elections in the countryside. They also targeted propaganda at middle classes, particularly small businessmen like small shopkeepers, merchants, craftsmen, the lower middle classes as we call them, because they'd been badly hit by the 1923 inflation and felt particularly threatened by communism. They also directed propaganda at German youth. Okay, they were the future voters. They were frustrated by the general lack of action in Berlin, and they also directed propaganda at women. Finally, they directed propaganda at people in influential positions, and Hitler formed a strategic alliance with the leader of the German Nationalist Party, Alfred Hugenberg, in 1929, who gave the Nazis access to their huge media empire called UFA, and that was because Hugenberg organised a referendum against the Young Plan, and so that gave Hitler and the Nazis a platform just before the Wall Street crash hit Germany, and he got Hitler's name in the newspapers literally at the right time, which they're able to tap into. So you move to the conclusion, and the key thing to focus in on the conclusion then is the Wall Street crash. The point is, by October 1929, to everything you've talked about in the answer there, the Nazi Party was very well positioned. It was a small party. They, on the surface, didn't look dangerous. They'd only got 12 seats in the previous election, but they were very, very tightly structured and well organised, waiting for bad times to return. And so when those bad times did return in September 1930, they struck out, and it worked very, very effectively. So the Nazis went from being the smallest party to being the second largest, with 107 seats in just 2 years. So that is a question that could be used and adapted for an essay, or you cherry pick and you pick the relevant bits for smaller questions depending on how it comes up.